And then he opened the door, and we had a sort of discussion about where or where not we were going to go.
For years, the world admired the royal family as a picture of unity, tradition, and untouchable grace. Behind the velvet curtains and glittering crowns, however, a storm had been brewing, silent but deadly. Whispers echoed through the ancient halls of Buckingham Palace, secrets too explosive for public ears. And when the moment finally came, it wasn't an outsider who shattered the illusion, it was Princess Anne herself. With a few icy words, she tore apart the delicate balance the monarchy had fought so hard to maintain. Shock waves rippled through the palace walls as Queen Camilla's authority was questioned in front of stunned onlookers. It was a confrontation rooted not in petty jealousy, but in a truth too dangerous to ignore. A truth that Queen Elizabeth herself had sworn to protect. And now, it was ready to explode. The world always believed the royal family was untouchable, polished to perfection, and united by blood and duty. Yet behind their carefully staged appearances, a silent battle raged, invisible to the adoring. Crowds and distant cameras. For decades, hidden tensions grew like cracks beneath a flawless surface, waiting for the right moment to erupt. That moment came when Princess Anne, the famously no-nonsense daughter of Queen Elizabeth, decided she could stay silent no longer. It happened during a regal banquet, a night meant to celebrate unity and strength. Instead, it became the battleground for one of the most shocking public confrontations in royal history. As Queen Camilla basked in her newfound title, a sudden, chilling interruption silenced the room. Princess Anne, calmighty and unflinching, stood and declared for all to hear. Camilla was never meant to be queen, only queen consort. The air thickened. For a heartbeat, it seemed no one dared breathe. Then, a wave of stunned realization swept across the gilded hall. This was not a careless insult, nor a slip of the tongue. Insiders quickly confirmed that Anne's words echoed Queen Elizabeth's private wishes. Long before her death, the late monarch had been clear. Camilla's title was to remain queen consort, out of respect for history, tradition, and the ghost of Princess Diana that still haunted the monarchy. Yet somehow, in the months following the queen's death, Camilla had quietly dropped the consort, embracing the full crown as her own. By standing her ground, Princess Anne unleashed forces that had been simmering under the surface for years. Forces that not even King Charles, with all his influence and power, could control once they were set free. What Anne revealed was not merely a personal opinion. It was a deep betrayal of Queen Elizabeth's legacy, a revelation that split loyalties. Within the palace itself, as King Charles looked on, torn between love and duty, the world outside remained blissfully unaware of the chaos unfolding inside those stone walls. But the truth had already escaped, and it could not be silenced. Princess Anne had started something that would shake the monarchy to its very core. The question now was not if the royal family would survive, but at what cost. But what could cause such deep hostility between two royal women who were supposed to stand united? Long before crowns, titles, and public allegiances hardened into stone, there was a love story, one that should have changed the course of royal history, but was instead buried under duty, expectation, and ancient rules. In the quiet corners of a life Anne never chose, she found herself captivated by Andrew Parker Bowles. Not as a princess, not as a symbol of national pride, but simply as a woman longing for a future that felt almost within reach. For a fleeting moment, it seemed that love might win against the heavyweight of tradition. But the monarchy had other plans. Andrew's Catholic faith sealed their fate. Royal protocols dictated that Anne, a daughter of the Church of England, could never marry outside her congregation. Their bond, genuine and powerful, was ruthlessly severed by laws far older than their romance. In the aftermath, Anne was left not only with a broken heart, but with a permanent scar, a scar that would be torn open again when Andrew's life intersected with another woman's path. That woman was Camilla. When Camilla married Andrew Parker Bowles, it wasn't just another union. To Anne, it was an unbearable betrayal. It wasn't Camilla's fault that Andrew needed to move on. It wasn't Anne's fault that tradition tore them apart. But none of that mattered. In Anne's eyes, Camilla had stepped into a life that had once been hers to dream about. And worse, Camilla wore it with the ease of someone who had never fought and lost for love. Years later, Camilla's entry into Anne's world didn't end with Andrew. It escalated when Camilla became entangled with Anne's own brother, Prince Charles, forever binding her to the royal family. Anne's grief, once buried under the heavy demands of duty, was now tethered to her every public appearance, every private gathering, every reminder of what could have been. Even time, it seemed, could not dull the bitterness. When Charles married Camilla in 2005, the wounds that had never truly healed reopened in full view of the world. At the grand wedding, amidst the glittering crowd and royal pageantry, Princess Anne's cold demeanor said everything her lips refused to utter. Body language experts analyzing the event saw what the cameras could not hide. Anne's stiff posture, her distant glances, her complete lack of warmth, it was a masterclass in silent rebellion. Her pain, her resentment, and her disgust played out beneath the rigid rules of royal behavior, too potent to mask even on the grandest stage. But Anne's quiet fury was never about a lost lover alone. Over the years, it festered into something far greater, something that could no longer be ignored. This was no longer about the heartache of a young princess. It was about the honor of the crown itself. And now, as tensions soared behind palace walls, Anne was about to turn her personal grudge into a battle for the very soul of the monarchy. In a world where tradition is law and hierarchy defines destiny, few dare to defy the invisible chains that bind them. But Princess Anne, with a lifetime of unflinching loyalty to the crown, reached a point where loyalty no longer meant silence. When Queen Camilla, once an outsider, now stood crowned alongside King Charles, Anne made it brutally clear acceptance was not guaranteed. Respect could not be commanded by titles alone. It had to be earned, and in Anne's eyes, Camilla had failed. In a stunning act of rebellion that would echo through royal history, Princess Anne refused to curtsy to Queen Camilla. A simple gesture, yet one loaded with centuries of meaning. It was a shot fired across the royal divide, a reminder that not all within the House of Windsor were willing to bow to the new order. Behind the grand ceremonies and polished speeches, Anne was fighting a battle for the monarchy's soul, a battle few even realized had begun. Pushing beyond mere symbolism, Anne insisted the old rules be respected. She championed the precedence of the royal family, a little-known but potent tradition that declared that blood-born royals like herself and Princess Charlotte should outrank any woman who married into the family, no matter what titles they were later granted. This was not about vanity. This was about protecting the purity of a lineage that stretched back centuries, about safeguarding the memory of a queen who had built her life on duty, not desire. The world watched in awe during King Charles's coronation as Anne, clad in full military regalia, rode on horseback to lead the procession. She wasn't just participating, she was dominating, a living emblem of loyalty to the crown over the individual sitting upon it. In a moment when Camilla should have been basking in the glow of public adoration, it was Anne who captured the hearts and headlines. And for Camilla, the silence that followed was deafening. Not a single prominent voice rose to defend the new queen against Anne's silent defiance. The absence of support spoke volumes. In the shadows of royal protocol, Camilla's position revealed itself to be far more fragile than the golden crown atop her head suggested. Anne's rebellion had cracked the facade, exposing a dangerous truth. Titles could be given, but acceptance could not be forced. And yet, as the dust of Coronation Day settled, an even greater storm loomed beyond the palace gates. For while Anne waged her war within the walls of tradition, public sentiment toward Queen Camilla was souring fast. Outside, a nation's memory of betrayal and heartbreak was beginning to rise, and this time, no title, no ceremony, and no crown would be enough to hold it back. Camilla's path to the crown was unlike any before her. It was not lined with adoration, nor built on fairy tales of destiny fulfilled. Instead, every step she took toward the throne was shadowed by resistance, scandal, and and the ghost of a woman the world refused to forget. From the beginning, Camilla's name was whispered with resentment. To millions, she was not a future queen, but the intruder who had shattered the dreams of Princess Diana, and, by extension, the dreams of an entire nation. When Diana died, the grief was not confined to the royal family. It was a global wound, raw and aching. The world did not simply mourn a princess. They mourned an idea, a hope that royalty could be both regal and kind, powerful yet human. In that devastation, Camilla's image was cemented in a place few could. Escape the villainous in a tragedy that played out on the world stage. No apology, no act of contrition could rewrite the narrative now sealed by public outrage. The marriage between Charles and Camilla only deepened the wounds. It wasn't simply a private union between two people seeking happiness. It was a political act, a defiance against the wishes of millions. The church hesitated, the public recoiled, and even Queen Elizabeth herself maintained a cold distance, granting approval only when protocol left her no choice. The ceremony was stripped of grandeur, reduced to a quiet, civil gathering that spoke volumes louder than any royal decree. It was a marriage haunted by disapproval, and Camilla could feel it in every glance, every cold handshake, every headline that refused to soften. Desperate to repair the damage, Camilla threw herself into charity work. She championed causes that mattered, stood beside survivors of domestic violence, advocated for literacy, fought for animal welfare, raised awareness for osteoporosis. With each public appearance, she tried to carve out a new image, a woman of compassion, not ambition. Yet, the harder she worked, the more elusive the prize became. Public forgiveness was a fortress she could never quite breach. Years passed, accolades came, smiles widened at royal engagements, but beneath it all, an invisible wall remained. For every newspaper praising her charitable endeavors, there were whispers that refused to die. No matter how many awards she received, to many, she would always be the woman who stole Diana's life away. And just when it seemed she might finally be winning over the doubters, fate delivered another cruel twist. For as Camilla struggled to rewrite her story, another royal figure emerged, radiant and beloved, carrying with her the same magic that once crowned Diana, the world's princess. And with every smile, every wave, every act of kindness, this rising star only deepened the shadows around Camilla's crown. Because this time, the world had found a new princess to believe in, and her name was Kate Middleton. In the eyes of the eyed public, a new princess of hearts had emerged, and with her rise, Camilla's worst fears were realized. Where Camilla's image struggled to survive under the weight of old scandals, Kate Middleton's arrival was like a breath of fresh air sweeping through the dust-choked corridors of the monarchy. She didn't have to demand adoration. She didn't have to rewrite history. She simply became it, by being everything the people had longed for after Diana's tragic fall. Natural, graceful, and effortlessly beloved, Kate stepped into the royal spotlight, and the nation embraced her without hesitation. It wasn't just Kate's polished public appearances or her designer gowns that captured hearts. It was her quiet strength, her devotion to charity, her ability to move among crowds with genuine humility. Unlike others who wore their titles like heavy armor, Kate wore hers lightly, almost reluctantly, which only made the public adore her more. In a world still mourning the loss of a princess who had once held their hearts, they saw something familiar in Kate's gentle spirit, and they clung to it. Queen Elizabeth's swift approval of Kate sent an unmistakable message. The Queen, cautious and slow to bestow favor, welcomed Kate with open arms, recognizing the rare blend of dignity and compassion she brought to the future of the crown. For Camilla, this royal blessing was more than unsettling. It was devastating. Where she had spent years clawing her way toward reluctant acceptance, Kate was handed the keys to the kingdom almost overnight. As the public gaze shifted, the symbolism grew too powerful to ignore. Kate was often seen wearing pieces of jewelry that once belonged to Princess Diana and Queen Elizabeth. tangible links to the past, carefully chosen symbols that deepened the emotional bond with the people. Every sapphire, every pearl, every diamond glinted with memories of the women Britain had cherished, and Kate wore them not just as ornaments, but as sacred trusts. Trusts that, by right of public affection, were now hers to guard. Beneath the surface, however, a colder reality simmered. Camilla's insecurity gave way to resentment. Behind the palace gates, moments of tension boiled over. Small humiliations aimed at Kate's family, subtle slights that sent an unmistakable message. Camilla may have accepted Kate's presence, but she would never embrace her. It was a war not fought with swords or decrees, but with glances, cold shoulders, and whispered warnings. The young princess and the reluctant queen were locked in a silent battle for the soul of the monarchy, and the people had already chosen their side. But if Camilla's war with Kate was quiet and strategic, a deeper, older wound would soon rise to the surface. Because while Kate won the love of a nation, Prince William harbored a silent grudge far more personal, far more dangerous, and it was aimed directly at the woman who had once shattered his world. To Prince William, Camilla was never simply his father's new wife. She was the woman whose shadow loomed over the darkest chapters of his young life. Long before the world saw Camilla stepping into the royal spotlight, William had already branded her in his heart, not as a stepmother, but as a living reminder of betrayal, heartbreak, and the shattered dreams of a family that once seemed untouchable. No ceremony, no crown, no carefully staged photograph could erase what had been broken in him. William adored Princess Diana with the pure, unshakable love only a child can offer. She wasn't just his mother, she was his protector, his guide, his entire world. When that world collapsed under the weight of scandal, infidelity, and public humiliation, the young prince was left clinging to memories while the adults around him spun a web of secrets and survival. And in the tangled ruins of his family, Camilla's figure stood out in sharp, painful relief. The day William first met Camilla was not a joyous occasion. It was a necessary evil, a quiet formality arranged behind closed doors. Insiders say Camilla was trembling when she faced the boy who had lost everything. After the meeting, she reportedly needed a stiff drink just to steady herself, a small detail that spoke volumes. She may have won over Charles, but she knew winning over his son was a battle she would never truly win. William never made a scene. He never lashed out in public. He understood, far too early, the heavy burden of royal expectation. Outwardly, he accepted Camilla's presence for the sake of peace. Inwardly, he built walls thicker than any stone castle. Walls that would never allow her to breach the sacred space where Diana's memory still lived. He tolerated Camilla, but he never embraced her. And as the years passed, that cold tolerance solidified into something unbreakable. Whispers around the palace only fueled the divide. Rumors began to circulate that Camilla had occasionally leaked sensitive details about William and Harry to trusted outsiders, rumors she never quite managed to squash. Whether true or not, the damage was done. Every sideways glance, every guarded conversation only deepened William's mistrust. In his eyes, Camilla was not family. She was an outsider who had survived by reshaping the truth, and he was determined never to let her into his world completely. Yet while these private tensions simmered in silence, a far greater shift was quietly taking place within the palace walls. Camilla's standing, already fragile, was about to face a challenge far more powerful than whispered rumors or lingering resentment. Because, as the monarchy prepared for its future, a decision was brewing that would sideline Camilla permanently, and once again, William's quiet strength would play a role more decisive than anyone dared admit. In a moment of quiet resolve, King Charles made a decision that would alter the course of royal history forever. It was not proclaimed with fanfare or royal decree. It was made behind closed doors, in a silence thick with the weight of impossible choices. For years, the past had clung to the monarchy like an invisible chain, holding back progress, breeding resentment, But now, as tensions boiled over and public trust teetered dangerously on the edge, Charles realized that sentiment could no longer dictate destiny. The future had to be claimed, and it would not belong to Camilla. After Princess Anne's bold confrontation and the rising discontent rumbling among the people, Charles knew the inevitable could not be postponed. In a move that would send ripples through the royal institution, William and Kate were officially declared Prince and Princess of Wales, the ultimate signal that the monarchy was pivoting toward a new era. It was a decision that carried the full weight of Queen Elizabeth's legacy. Tradition demanded it, public hope demanded it, and Charles, burdened by both love and duty, could no longer resist the tide. This shift wasn't merely symbolic. By elevating William and Kate, Charles quietly but powerfully reshaped the internal power dynamics of Buckingham Palace. Camilla, once poised to sit at the very center of influence, found herself subtly moved aside, her role increasingly ceremonial. No formal announcement stripped her authority. No harsh words cut her down. But the message was clear. In the hearts of the monarchy's future and in the eyes of the public, Camilla's reign would remain a footnote, not a legacy. For Charles, it was an agonizing crossroads. Loyalty to the woman who had stood by him through decades of scandal. Loneliness and loss warred with loyalty to the institution that defined his very existence. Yet the crown was bigger than any marriage, bigger than anyone's individual happiness. Charles had seen firsthand how clinging to personal desires had nearly brought the monarchy to its knees during his own youth. He would not repeat those mistakes now, not when the survival of the House of Windsor demanded sacrifice. The people's faith, battered by years of scandal and doubt, now looked to William and Kate as the hope of a reborn monarchy. Their youth, their compassion, their tireless devotion to public service offered a vision of royalty that could heal old wounds and inspire new dreams. Charles understood, perhaps more than anyone, that the throne he had waited his entire life to inherit was not his to shape, it was his to safeguard. And to do that, he had to step aside from the spotlight he had once longed for and push the next generation forward. But just as the future seemed finally secured, fate had one more cruel twist in store. Another secret, buried deep within the royal past, was about to resurface, and with it, the cracks that Charles had tried so desperately to seal would split wide open once more. In the Queen's final moments, behind the thick curtains of Buckingham Palace and away from the prying eyes of a restless nation, a whispered vow was made. It was a vow not written into any official document, not broadcast with ceremony, but spoken quietly between a mother and the daughter she trusted most. Queen Elizabeth, the steadfast symbol of a century's traditions, placed the weight of her final wish on the shoulders of Princess Anne. And that wish was clear. Camilla must never ascend beyond the title of Queen Consort. It was not an act of cruelty, but of protection, a safeguard for a monarchy already bruised by scandal and softened by the tides of change. Princess Anne, with the unyielding sense of duty that had defined her entire life, made a silent promise in return. A promise not just to her mother, but to the very legacy of the crown itself. No matter the pressure, no matter the cost, Anne would defend the line drawn by the Queen's final breath. She would ensure that the monarchy remained tethered to honor, not ambition. When Anne publicly challenged Camilla at the regal banquet, the world saw only the surface of the conflict. They missed the deeper story. They missed the invisible chain, linking Anne's bold defiance to a sacred trust, whispered at a deathbed. This was not personal revenge. This was not jealousy. This was the heavy burden of loyalty being carried out under the cold, merciless lights of public scrutiny. For King Charles, caught between two women he loved in very different ways, the fallout was unbearable. On one side stood his wife, Camilla, who had endured decades of hatred to stand beside him. On the other stood his sister, Anne, carrying the final wishes of the mother he had revered above all others. His heart tore in two, but in the end, duty whispered louder than desire. Charles knew that to break Anne's silent promise would not only fracture their family, but sever the fragile thread of trust still connecting the monarchy to its people. Chupitu. Monarchy now stands at a precipice, a crossroads where tradition and ambition collide with terrifying force. Camilla's dreams of absolute acceptance have been quietly, devastatingly curtailed. The future no longer belongs to those who fought hardest for position. It belongs to those who embody the spirit of the crown itself, service over self, sacrifice over glory, and none of it would have been possible without Princess Anne's courage. Her willingness to risk everything, even her own reputation, to uphold the Queen's final wish, has reshaped the monarchy's future in ways that no title, no crown, and no power play could ever undo. As Buckingham Palace faces an uncertain future, one haunting question remains. Will the crown continue to honor Queen Elizabeth's true vision? Or will it, too, be lost to the ambition it was meant to resist? Share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And we will see you in the next one.